Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm very happy to be basically the first masterclass session for everybody on what day is it? Day 10 of the Good Start Summit. Let me introduce myself. Name is Noorhaina Noor. You can all call me Ain. And I am Regional Head of Client Engagement for Dattel. And I would like to welcome you all to this session. And I hope that we're going to learn some very interesting things today. So I would really love for everybody to kind of participate in the chat. Usually, we like to have a little bit of banter, but I can understand that, it's a little bit of a different format. So I do welcome a lot of questions about what I'm sharing with you today about Dattel and about what we do and how that can benefit businesses in terms of product positioning. Now, I'm going to introduce a particular concept which is called behavior archetypes. So take note of that. It's going to come up quite a lot later on in the session. And I'm going to introduce you to our consumer intelligence platform and show you how to apply that to kind of strategize your product positioning and basically do your marketing a lot smarter. Okay? So first things first, I think we kind of need to talk a little bit about Dattel, or do you want to talk a little bit about myself? I'll talk about myself a little bit first. Basically, my background starts from media and broadcasting. I consider myself a storyteller, so my role has always been in some form of storytelling in one way or another. And since joining Dattel, it's still storytelling. The only difference is you're doing your storytelling using data. So I hope that my story today is going to be inspiring and also encouraging to a lot of businesses who may have a little bit of anxiety when it comes to thinking about working with data. If I can do it, basically anybody else can. That's how I look at it. Yeah. Okay. So with regards to Dattel, we are, I think, about a 9-year-old company or an 8-year-old company now, homegrown, born, basically set up in Malaysia. It's an ASEAN company with presence in Thailand and Indonesia as well. And what we did was we started off with as a data capture company, but we've evolved into a consumer intelligence company, in which case this means that we capture and curate our data and present it in a platform that allows businesses or users to make marketing decisions and do marketing analysis from there. So with the data that we curate, it's all about consumer behavior. And I'm going to show you in a little. Yeah. So basically, if you're looking at improving your marketing strategies, your marketing tacticals, you can always come and talk to us. You can find us basically in the exhibitor section under the technology, software / applications. We're a diamond sponsor, but you have to go further down a bit like the list of exhibitors, or you can type Dattel or in the search, or you can just type the room number in the URL, room 399. Come and talk to us if you want to know a lot more about what we do and how we can help you with consumer data. Okay. Also, please follow us. We are on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, Facebook, basically all the important social media. I know not yet TikTok, we've got to figure out that part a little bit later. But please follow us on our social media as well, where we share important information about consumer data, but also share some updates about what we're doing with our platform and basically consumer intelligence. All right. Okay. Now let's get into the masterclass. So the first question I think that we kind of need to ask ourselves, and I know that a lot of people are struggling right now, particularly because of the COVID pandemic and how that's impacted a lot of businesses and how that's impacted how we relate to consumers. So I'm going to talk a lot about consumers, a lot more about B2C kind of businesses or B2C related businesses. So this is data that comes from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's pretty fresh because it came from 2020. But I think this is relevant pretty much to a lot of business, regardless of other external factors like COVID and whatnot. Yeah, but I will go with the top 6 reasons. But from number 6 to number 2, these are the reasons. But the number one reason why businesses actually fail is because they do not do enough market research. They do not investigate the market enough. And the impact of not investigating the market enough, if you notice, it actually has an impact on all the other items 2 to 3. The reasons 2 to number 6 are all impacted by whether or not you've done sufficient investigation of the market. It can affect your business plan because if you don't have a clear understanding of who you're selling to, then, the business plan is already affected by that. Your financing decision making also can be affected by that. I don't even need to say how much your marketing is going to be affected by that, and so on and so forth. Now, why is it that businesses don't spend a lot of time on investigating the market? Now, this is, if any of you are familiar with this, I know I didn't mention the name here, but if you look at this, there are 5 forces. These are Porter's 5 forces when it comes to doing your market analysis. Understanding the competitive landscape, understanding the industry landscape, which means the framework in which whether new businesses can come in, how easy it is for new businesses to start within the industry. So that relates more to the industry landscape in relation to the framework, the legal frameworks, the regulations, and also the supply chain. Yeah, but it is the bottom 2 actually that I want to draw your attention to, and these are the 2 things that tend to be overlooked by many, especially small and medium enterprises. Okay, they are, out of 5, 2 of them actually relate to consumer or customer in this case. Customer power relates to how much actually does the customer or the consumer dictate basically can make or break your business lah, essentially. And the other one, the threat of substitution, relates more to if your product is not available or if the product that you are competing in or that you are offering is not available, regardless whether it's your brand or not. Do consumers have an alternative? Do they have many other choices beyond your competitors and yourself? So these are questions that need to be asked. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're looking at spending your marketing budget in the most efficient way possible to get to the right target audience, to get to the right target market in the most efficient way so that you can get better conversion, better return on your investments. So you should be asking yourself these questions, and you should be looking at data for the answers to these questions. I mean, let's face it, right now, I think there are a lot of basically people feeling the pinch of the MCO, lockdowns and then reopening of the economy, temporary reopening of the economy and then lockdowns again. And then a lot of people are saying, the government needs to look at science and data to make decisions. So if we're asking the government to make decisions based on science and data, shouldn't we as business owners, as marketers, as entrepreneurs do the same thing when it comes to operating our business? Isn't it the same principle at the end of the day, right? So you should be asking these questions and you should be looking for data, for the right kind of consumer data to answer them as well. Yeah, no more guessing, anecdotal information and all that sort of stuff. It can be very difficult, especially under very volatile circumstances. So what type of market research is usually done is what we consider as top-down. So when we say top-down, it's because it's usually led by the industry. It's also driven basically from looking at the target market that you're after. So you're focusing your attention on a specific group of consumers who fall within a certain set of parameters. So this is what's called as top-down. So when you do that, that means you're focusing on a certain set of consumers, but you're ignoring other types of consumers that exist within the consumer market itself. Yeah. So this is typical. And usually, let's say, for example, information and all that already has some customer database. So if you already have a customer database, you probably would be looking at maybe getting some information either on the transaction data of your customers, which means people who are already interacting with your brand, coming to your store, buying things from you, that sort of thing. So you'll be looking at that data set. But what you don't know from there is whether you are their first choice, whether they are coming to you because of temporary reasons, whether they are actually looking at other longer term solutions, or whether their tastes are going to change. So you don't see that. You only see it when they come to your store, when they start interacting with you and your brand. So there are also other ways, which is basically by focusing on a target segment. This means the target segment may be covering some of the people who are already your brand customers. And you say, it's basically looking at lookalikes, so to speak. But also you may be excluding some people who already are your customers, but it's just because they don't fit into the criteria of your target segment. They do buy from you, but you're not paying attention to them. That sort of thing. Yeah. So that could be a missed opportunity as well. And then you have another way of looking at the market, which is by focusing on the industry, which means everybody fits into that category of product and service. And then you're looking at the consumers who fall into that category. This is usually done by either like industry associations, it's done by trade associations. So it's done by organizations that have larger scale and that would cover and represent a lot more, a bigger number of those businesses. Or maybe even possibly government agencies, that sort of thing, who would also be looking into that kind of research. But this tends to be sporadic. Some industries may have the data, some industries may not have the data. So just a thought lah, wouldn't it be nice if SMEs could have access to this sort of data that is provided by state governments? Wouldn't it be nice if state governments or government agencies were to actually make this sort of data accessible by ensuring that there is always updated information on consumer behavior to help businesses get used to using data and then make decisions based on data? Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, what we do is we cover the entire consumer market. So whether it's this industry or another industry, it doesn't matter. Our focus is pretty much bottom up, which means, let's say, for example, everybody who's in this session right now, okay, you all represent all the consumers available. So I don't care whether or not you fit into an industry's target segment. What matters is I'm trying to understand your relationship with all of what we call here as verticals. Yeah, these are what we call verticals, not industry. So how you basically interact with fashion, how you interact, your eating habits, your dining habits, your mobility habits, your media consumption, your health and beauty behavior. So we're looking at every consumer and trying to build a relationship across all these different verticals. Now, when this happens, it means that everybody has access to the same set of data. No more not seeing something, no more only seeing a certain segment, cannot see another segment. All it takes is for the user, the business owner, the entrepreneur to look at the data and pick what perspective you want to see. But you have the possibility and the option to see multiple perspectives, to see what we call the hidden truth about consumer behavior. That is the bottom-up approach. And that is the Dattel approach. Why this is better? It's because once we do this, it is accessible not just because you have access to that data, but it is also a lot more affordable. It is a cost-effective way at the end of the day for the user to be able to access this data. Good market research, if you want to do one-time market research, can easily cost you upwards of 5 figures. And not the low end of 5 figures, or the high end of 5 figures. Easily can cost you. And I mean, this is in ringgit. But, having this allows us to actually change that perspective, which means businesses can actually afford to access consumer data at a far lower cost. Okay? So, I think now seems to be a good time to kind of show you guys what we're talking about when I say Dattel Voyager. So let me show you what our tool is. Welcome to Voyager. So this is basically our platform of consumer data. Where the data comes from? Like I said, we have experience in data capture. So we have a curated panel of consumers ages 20 to 69 years old. So we have 2,000 respondents coming from all the states in Malaysia. So a total of 2,000 from Malaysia. A total of 2,000 also from Thailand, but they come from 5 provinces plus Greater Bangkok. So the 5 provinces are Chiang Mai, Chonburi, Khon Kaen, Surat Thani and Songkhla, and then you've got Greater Bangkok. So that's our coverage. So this is where we get our data. We collect the data on a quarterly basis. So every quarter there is fresh data that we upload to Voyager for you to use, for you to see how consumer behavior is changing. Yeah. And then not only that, we also provide analytics. So what you're seeing here, we've got 3 dashboards, 3 types of dashboards for 3 different purposes. Insights is the simplest one. It's sort of like, I would say, is the entry point, especially for businesses that don't have a lot of experience or don't have a lot of resources to use data. So I will walk you guys through this in a little bit when I explain, remember, behavior archetypes. I'm going to come back to that. So we can use this basically for basic users who are still just getting accustomed to looking at data because it provides auto-generated narratives as well to the charts that you're going to see later. And then if you're feeling a little bit fancy, then you can go to persona analytics. Now, this is where we're talking about creating a data-driven profile or persona of your target customer, which means all you need to do is set in a few criteria, and then the data that we have is going to populate the dashboard with all the information about the consumer that you're after. And there is also something special that you can do here, which is basically exporting it to Facebook. And that is going to be explained a little bit more by my colleague in the next masterclass that comes after this. She's going to explain to you how to use persona analytics and how you can export that into Facebook for your Facebook ad targeting. Yeah. So that's going to be another interesting session. So you should look out for that. Diagnostics and prescriptive analytics at the middle. This one is more for, I would say, agencies, larger brands. Then what they do is they monitor brand health. So this is looking at brands that have a large presence, national presence, for example, so big brands, and looking at how those brands are perceived by different consumer segments. Yeah, so this one is usually used by bigger organizations and agencies. No harm if you're a small, medium enterprise that's also interested in looking at this. It's definitely an interesting step, but it will require a little bit more knowledge. I will always recommend start from insights, then go to persona analytics for action. And then finally, you can move on to the diagnostics and prescriptive analytics. Now, I want to show you guys also something here. This is what you can do, but you want to see the data. So this vertical taxonomy is the full list of all the data that we have available. And I'm just going to click on one of these verticals, food and beverage, where you can see just the list of some of these questions. Well, we have things to do with product consumption, but also behavior and activity. Okay. So let's say I want to look at beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, tea, all the questions related to tea. So you can see we have a bunch of questions and not all of them are in the dashboard. Yeah, because basically you can't put everything. There's a lot and this is just one vertical. But all this data is available on Voyager for you to utilize. And if you're feeling a bit more adventurous, you will be able to use it and mix and match the data using this segment, this workspace called Navigate. But I'm not going to cover that today because I think what I'm going to cover today is already a lot for you guys to digest, actually. Yeah. So I'm hoping that there are going to be a lot of questions later on because, but if we don't have time to answer all those questions, please come over to our exhibitor room 399. Yeah. And we will try to answer those questions. Okay. So now that I've shown you this, now I want to talk about behavior archetypes. So I want to go back to the slides just now. Okay. So behavior archetypes, familiar. So behavior archetypes essentially is a way for us to segment consumers. And we're looking at individuals and looking at how they interact with all the different verticals just now, right? So looking at how they interact with the verticals, we know that people have certain behaviors and not everybody shares the same set of behaviors. Everybody will have different combinations of behaviors as a matter of fact. And these different types of behaviors are what we call the behavior archetypes. So how we land on these behavior archetypes, by the way, this is a mock-up only. My behavior archetypes is not really like this. But how we look at behavior archetypes is basically we're looking at consumption-based segmentation, which means we're looking to segment and categorize people. Okay, we're looking at categorizing people according to their types of consumption. Secondly, we're looking at it across all these different verticals. Remember, because we're looking at it from a consumer perspective, we're able to draw the connections across the different verticals, seeing the connection between food consumption and fashion consumption at the same time if you want. And because the way we capture the data, it's offline data as well as online. So we're able to see things that you can't find on Facebook, you can't find on Google, you can't find on the digital footprints of consumers. Yeah. And because it represents the population, it doesn't represent just the Facebook audience. It doesn't just represent the TikTok audience. It represents all consumers. And finally, as I mentioned, our data is tracked on a quarterly basis, which means the data is also refreshed. And you get to see changes in the behavior archetypes, whether some archetypes are becoming more common. Are there more people behaving in this way? Or is it becoming less common? Are there less people behaving in this way? And so all this is information that's really valuable to determine how you need to position. So We have 27 behavior archetypes overall. That's a lot of archetypes. But we may have more later on. Okay. So these are at the moment, as of Q1 2021, we have 27 behavior archetypes. And this is just a sample of some of the behavior archetypes. We've got cashless me. And then we've got accessorized me, people who like to buy and purchase accessories for various reasons. Trend seeker me. And these are all categorized according to, they're regrouped also according to different themes. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you guys later when we go back to Voyager. Yeah. So we've got online gamer as well, nutritious me, fitness me. These are just some of the 27 behavior archetypes. So if you want to see the full list, simple, all you need to do is just head over to our exhibitor room 399. You can download a PDF copy of an explainer that describes all the 27 behavior archetypes. Yeah, so all you need to do is just go to our room 399. All right. Now, applying it. Now, we've been talking about basically optimizing product positioning. And this is exactly why behavior archetypes is important. When you're looking at consumers, and usually when it comes to how businesses would look at targeting their segments, you would always start, this is basic, you would start with, of course, product consumption. And secondly, you would go with the demographics. You would go basically either by age and gender or a combination of age, gender, and income, for example. And then maybe a few descriptors that you think would be suitable. But the thing is, when you start there, how do you validate? You need to validate whether or not the market that you've just described, people who fit this criteria, are actually, one, is it a big enough market for you? Two, how many other competitors are in that same space, targeting the same group of people? Okay, so that means what is your share of pie, so to speak? So you need to know that. So product positioning is first. And then the other thing also is that once we apply the behavior archetypes, and this is something that's also very interesting that I'm going to share with you on Voyager, is that you're able to focus your communications better. Each behavior archetype may actually respond differently compared to other behavior archetypes. Yeah. So when you're focusing on a specific grouping by incorporating behavior archetypes, you may find that your target market respond better based on certain kinds of messaging compared to what you have tried before. So you can even look whether your branding, so one is your product positioning, secondly, even your branding and the rest of your digital marketing strategies can be, you can use this as a compass for you to determine, is your messaging hitting the right market, hitting the right notes for this right market? Okay. Ultimately, of course, again, it is at the end of the day for the purpose of increasing your conversion rate. So what you want to do is make sure that you are positioned in the most advantageous strategic position in the market, where you can capture maybe either an underserved market, or you can clearly demonstrate your product USP or your service USP. And then you want to make sure that your communications is right, which means you want to make sure that how you're speaking to the audience that you're after is actually hitting the right notes. And then it will, all variables remaining the same should then lead to an improved conversion. Yeah. So now I think it's time for us to go back to Voyager and let's take a look. I'm going to show you what you can do using insights. Okay. I'm wondering how we are so far, and I hope that everybody is, following this, and I'm hoping that there are questions, because, I really like to know also whether or not people find that, this is something that I can use, and this is something that actually addresses certain aspects of my business that I had not been able to figure out before, so I think that part is really, really, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty important, basically. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go to, let's get market sizing first. So I want to introduce you guys to this platform first, this dashboard, which is market sizing. So obviously, first and foremost, you need to know the market that you're after. What is the potential actually? Assuming that you've already done your competitor analysis, you know who your competitors are, you know how they are positioned, and then you need to figure out how you want to position yourself against them. So here you can look at market sizing. Whether you're looking at market sizing for yourself or looking at market sizing and comparing and mapping out all your competitors' market sizing as well. Up to you how you want to do this. Okay. So for market sizing, we always start with a product category first. I'm going to go, this by default, it starts with fashion products, but I'm going to go with tea. Because we had a conversation the other day and somehow there were a lot of jokes about tea. But, you know, you have to join a networking session for those jokes. Okay, so what do you see here? I've chosen this. So this is your criteria to understand the market for a particular product category. Now, let me describe what you're seeing as well. On the right here, you see, okay, this is pretty standard that you will see in most of our dashboards. This is a description of the market size, okay? On the right is what we call a static chart. This does not change. The numbers do not change. They represent a total estimated size of the consumer market between the age of 20 to 69. That is the total estimate of the market. It is not an absolute number. We don't go out and count every single person and say, hey, you, what's your age? You know, we don't do that. We have to use statistical calculations, obviously, to do an estimate. It's weighted to the national census. So we look at our sample and we apply the necessary weightage to approximate a 2,000 sample size to the national population. Okay, so that is the estimate for the Malaysia data. So I'm going to demonstrate with Malaysia data. We do have Thai data as well, but I'm not going to go back and forth between countries just to show you guys. The data and the charts are pretty much the same regardless of the country. It's just that the information will change based on the values of the respective countries. So this is static, doesn't change. What changes and what's dynamic are these two boxes. You've got addressable market size and you've got market percentage. So addressable market size basically represents the people who are based on the product criteria that you chose earlier. Yeah. So this is based on Q1 2021 data. So when we get Q2 2021 data, some of this is going to change, based on the consumption behavior. All right. So for Q1 2021, we see that this is the market size of tea consumers, but at the same time, we see the percentage representation. So this changes, and this also will change because this is a percentage representation of the addressable market, the total market size as the base, okay? Or the main market size as the base. So this 91% is actually this 14.5 million over the 60 million. Okay? And then below here, you see what is a basic automatically generated according to the output of the charts. So it will describe what you're seeing in the charts. Yeah? So that helps you to understand. So you've got a lot of information already. Now I want to go to the next one, which is behavior archetypes. So this is a tab that will help you to refine your grouping a little bit more. So we know that the chart above here, the entire tea consuming market. What you see on the left is also market, this one that I'm highlighting below here. What you see on the right now looks the same as on the left. Now these are the proportion of the top 10 behavior archetypes. So we're looking at the top 10 behavior archetypes of the tea consuming market at the moment. But on the, you can refine this further. The data, give it a few seconds. There you go. And now you see that the data has changed to represent the refined segment. These are tea drinkers who are in the age group 30 to 39 and are women. So this fits the refined segment already. And as you can see, there are some differences between the order of the behavior archetypes and the proportion of the behavior archetypes. Which means chef me, those who spend their time at home cooking, they like to try different cuisines, they like to cook different cuisines. They also spend quite a bit on kitchen appliances. So this becomes the topmost archetype, the most common archetype. Yeah? And you see impulsive bargain junkie dropping down a little bit, and you see some other patterns that are changing within. Yeah? Social media junkie drops down, for example. And so on and so forth. So you do see some of these behaviors that change. And then, of course, there's the description as well. So that's what you can do when you're looking at behavior archetypes. You straight away can determine, okay, which is the group that you're particularly interested in. It doesn't mean that the biggest is always the best. Okay? But this is, once you start looking at the behavior archetypes, you can say, okay, I want to focus on people who fit a particular behavior archetype, and then you need to calculate. So as you can see, once we've refined the behavior archetypes, the demographic selection, once we've refined it to the age group and the gender that we want, the percentage here and the addressable market size also changes. Main market size remains the same. So you see that this now points to the refined segment. So automatically already this gives you all this sort of information with a summary as well of the charts to explain what you're seeing. Yeah, but there's more. So this is just one. This is for you to determine how you're going to use that, how you're going to figure out what the market size is, and therefore which one is going to be suitable for you. Then you decide whether you're looking at capturing which of the segments and comparing against maybe how your other competitors are positioning themselves against all these groups of people. So they are all the same consumer segment. It's just that whether they display which of those behavior archetypes more. Yeah. All right. So the next one that I want to show, and we're going to go back to market sizing. I'm going to skip the customer persona for this one because this does not use behavior archetypes. This part is very interesting. This is the customer messaging. Customer messaging is built on the premise of using what we call the Schwartz value theory of human values. So I'm going to tell you that out there are a lot of pseudo-scientific methods of categorizing human personality. Okay, so you do need to be careful about some of the different ways of measuring personality or values. What we use is a robust and scientifically proven method, which is the Schwartz theory of human values. So that's the basis of what we're looking at. Now, what this will do, and I'm going to choose first. I'm going to go back to choosing our females 30 to 39. So this consumer values or customer messaging starts with your demographics first. So once we start with the demographics, then the narrative populates itself according to the data here. So the chart populates with the data according to your criteria just now, your demographic criteria. You can see the base 30 to 39, all women. Okay. Now these are all the different types of values, which you can see they're also available in Voyager to see a summary of all these values. But essentially, these are values that represent how consumers see themselves and how consumers see society. So it's about their ideals, how they want to be seen, how they want to be seen in society, and what kind of social structure that they want. So in a way, when you're speaking to them, you want to speak to them in a way that they want to see themselves. So their ideal version of themselves. They don't want to hear you say things like, basically they don't want to hear negative things. What they want to see is that you are going to solve their problem. So solving their problem means helping them become however they see about themselves. What is the thing that they see of themselves? So when we start looking at this, we're able to see, don't worry about this chart. I know it can be very complicated to try and explain this, but most important is actually the summary over here. This helps to explain the three top values for this particular group, 30 to 39 women. Yeah. So you see the list of the values here that explains global citizen, competitor, and humanist, and explains what they are. And at the end of at the bottom here also explains what kind of message that will resonate with them. You don't need to take it literally, but the spirit of the message is there. So as you then, this is the interesting part. Then you can refine this further. So right here you see global citizen, competitor, and humanist among women ages 30 to 39. So if I were to focus, for example, now I'm choosing gastronomic foodie as the theme, and these are all the behavior archetypes under it, and I'm choosing nutritious me. So if I choose the behavior archetype nutritious me, suddenly I'm seeing a slight difference. I still see global citizen and humanist, but there's no more competitor. It now becomes explorer. So you are able to find a way to refine your messaging. This is where we're talking about targeted messaging. Applying the behavior archetypes into your segmentation to improve your product positioning also means that you need to find the right kind of message that will resonate with the audience. And you can see if you change it to something else, for example, if I go for beauty and vanity, for example, and I want to go for beautiful me. A second. Now you see that instead of global citizen, humanist, you're seeing pleasure seeker popping up among beautiful me. So as long as you're trying to decide what is your product, who is your product after, refine it with the behavior archetype, you can see that the messaging also will need to be adjusted to suit the audience that you're talking to. There's no more looking at one kind of audience and then hoping that it will target everybody and everybody will feel that they're connected to that. If you utilize this, that means that you're focusing on this target audience and you're ensuring that your messaging strategy also consistently talks to that audience. See? So that is how you want to apply consumer behavior and consumer data and consumer intelligence into making sure that every step, from your branding, your product positioning, down to how you communicate to your audience also. So at the end of the day, you're able to incorporate all this to improve that conversion. Yeah. So I hope that, there's a lot more that I can share on Voyager, but like I said, stick around for the next masterclass. If you want to see more under persona analytics, my colleague is going to share that. Also, come over to our booth and take a look and come and chat with us, and we will be able to talk a bit more about your needs and how you want to, and even explain a little bit more about what you're seeing and contextualize it to your business as well. Okay, this is just a freebie. This is what all the behavior types, if I organize them according to what is most common, this is most common to the least common. This is what the spread is like for the behavior archetypes. And I'm just showing this for you. You can actually find it in Voyager if you take the time to pull the data, but it's quite straightforward. Yeah. Impulsive bargain junkie being the most common. No surprises, given the current circumstances. Everybody is looking, spending power has reduced significantly. So everybody is looking for those kinds of opportunities to get good bargains and stuff like that. Social media junkie, nutritious me, chef me, house proud me. At the end here is KTV clubber, which is no surprise also. It's not like people can go out and spend time, in entertainment outdoors. So the number of people, the proportion of people who are fit into this behavior archetype as of Q1 also is far less. And this is what it looks like in Thailand, just shifting. The ranks are shifting. So I think maybe about 6 of the behavior archetypes are still the same in the ranks, but there are still some shifts. Impulsive bargain junkie, KTV clubber remain the same, but you see some shifts in which one is higher than the other. This is from Thailand. Yeah. So this is all the kind of information that you're able to see if you're utilizing. Now, you do need to caution. Just because there's a lot of information does not mean that consumer intelligence is a genie in a bottle. Okay? It is not. It's not like you snap your fingers and you will get all your answers straight away, as I've demonstrated. It does take a little bit of time and effort. Yeah. So, but that's what we're all here for. And that's why you are here for the masterclass. That's why you're here for the eBiz Start Summit, because you want to learn more and better yourselves. So consumer intelligence is something that you do need to pick up some additional skills. And I'd be happy to share some of those tips as well. Again, come and talk to us and we can give you a little bit more information on how to utilize it. While it's not a genie in a bottle, it can still show you a whole new world. Yeah. So just some tips. Whenever you're using data, firstly, make sure you have clear goals. Know what you want to do. Know what sort of outcomes you're looking for in order for you to decide what sort of data is going to be important. So before you start diving into a whole data dump, it can be very overwhelming. As I've shown you, we've got a lot of data. If you don't know where you want to start, if you don't know what outcome you're looking for, you're going to be in trouble. So make sure you have very clear goals about what you want to achieve. And then those goals should decide what sort of data, what sort of information you should be looking for. Yeah. Then the second thing is it's important to understand the chart, which means a chart is basically a picture. It's just a picture, but it's data. So learn to describe the picture first before interpreting what it means. So know the fact that this is a picture that has what is on the right, what is on the left. Does this picture make sense at first glance? Yeah. Then once you've understood the chart and understanding also that basically the chart is showing you some information, it doesn't give you the full picture. There's always context that needs to be included. Contextualize that information with whatever other data that you may have, either your own customer data, for example, or environmental, other industrial data, and other factors as well that need to be that need to be taken into account before you make your final decision. Remember the Porter's 5 forces? Take into account the 5 forces before you land on what you want to do. Yeah. So those are my tips. Again, if you want to know more, all you need to do is just come over to us. Happy to have a chat with you. But of course, I'm happy to take questions now as well. I hope there are questions and I'm looking forward to answering them. If I can't answer them, I hope that my colleagues, because Chanya, who is going to talk next in the next session, and then my CEO, Ashran, is going to talk in the session after that. Perhaps they also will be able to help you to answer some of the questions, some of your burning questions relating to data and how you guys can do this better. Yeah. Okay. So I'm ready to take on questions. And yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ain, for the session just now. Sorry, we have a technical problem just now. All right. So the first question would be, can I use Voyager to look at market sizing? And how do you get your market sizing? And the next, what will be the scope that you get this data?
Okay. I did just demonstrate, so I think maybe this question came before before I covered the market sizing report. So yes, in short, yes, Voyager can pretty much be used to look at market sizing. You're looking at market sizing on a country basis, so the data itself is prepared from a country to country basis. How we get our market sizing, like I said, because what we do is we sample the consumer market to make it representative of the population, and then using statistical calculations to apply the weightage, we're able to approximate that representation across the rest of the consumer market within the country. So that's how we achieve market sizing. And the rest of the other data also is the same weightage applies. Yeah. The data at this point is survey based. So we collect survey data from our curated panel of respondents on a quarterly basis. So that data is coming in fresh, and we're able to see the changes in the composition of different types of consumers or different types of consumption behavior from quarter to quarter.
Okay. Right. So regarding your market sizing, do you have Asian data? Asian.
Right. So in terms of, if you're looking at the full ASEAN data, we do have a curated set of what we call ASEAN Vitals. But this is more on a macro levels, and these come from government sources and official sources. So we don't collect that data ourselves. Because that one is better to come from government sources and official data. However, if you're looking at market sizing, like I mentioned, it's country by country. So you will have to access the data first. If you're looking at multiple countries or multiple markets, then you're looking at one country first and then looking at another country separately. Because one thing to take note is that market size is one thing, but consumer behavior also varies from country to country. So just because you've got the same market of people who consume certain products does not mean the rest of their consumer behavior is the same just because they consume the same product. Yeah. So if you want to look at Malaysia, then you can access the Malaysia data. Then if you want to look at Thailand, you've got to access the Thailand data. So we have them, you can switch. If you subscribe to both countries, then you can switch between the two countries to look at the data, but you cannot combine them together. You have to, if you want to combine them together, you have to do it separately. Yeah.
Okay, I think that will be the answer to the question. And the next one will be, can a non-tech person be able to use the Voyager platform with no difficulties?
Well, firstly, of course, I need to understand what the non-tech means. I would say, all things considered, you definitely need to have a laptop because to use Voyager, so you do need to use a laptop in order to access Voyager, laptop or desktop. The reason why we don't recommend using a mobile phone is basically because when you're looking at a lot of data and you're looking at a small screen, that's not good for you. And there's a lot of information that you need to scroll through. So visually, it's going to be difficult to process that information from what you can see. So having a laptop and having a desktop is one thing that's important. I think it's not so much about being non-tech, but just being comfortable with data. Anybody who is a business person and entrepreneur will be dealing with data all the time anyway. You're looking at sales figures. You're looking at social media engagements. You're looking at stock numbers. You're looking at all data at all times. Even when you're hiring people and you're looking at people's resume, that's data. So it's just a different way of looking at data. It's just trying to make yourself comfortable and adjust yourself to different types of information. That's all. So once you get that principle, once you get the principles and the fundamentals in order, I think it should be no problem.
All right. So the next one will be is statistical sampling size of 2,500 samples is sufficient to determine a large section of the population?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think a lot of people have been spoiled by the assumption that, because Facebook, for example, or Google, for example, has a lot of data and the sample is 10,000, 100,000 or whatever. But statistically, the difference between 5,000 to 10,000 is not a lot. the margin, the changes is not a lot already. And most market research, even the good ones sometimes, will only, they sometimes even just sample even less than that, far less than that. Sometimes some market research will do a sampling of 3 to 500 people and say that represents a country. Okay? But it really is a point of how granular or how detailed you want it. Say, for example, if you're looking at consumer behavior in general, and then you want to look further down and really understand a particular specific behavior that is very niche. Now, once you start looking at that, then maybe you're going to need a bigger sample, or you're going to need to focus on that sample, which means you're looking at a niche. Therefore, you need to increase the sample size of that niche group in order to be able to look at the data and say that this is statistically significant and therefore representative of people who fit this criteria.
Okay, so I think this will be the last one. Can Voyager help to define keyword search on Google?
Okay. I think the data that we have essentially is data that we curate from our panel. And our data from our panel does not include what they do on their digital footprint, as in what they search for on Google. So I'm trying to understand where this question is coming from and framing this question. I hope I'm framing the question correctly. But in terms of defining keyword search, our data is coming, like I said, is more of offline behavior. So I know that there are going to be struggles, particularly when you're talking about a cookieless world that's coming very, very soon. Facebook is shutting down their insights, I think, end of this month. So there's going to be a lot of information that's no longer going to be accessible to businesses. That said, we are, like I said, we're not a genie in a bottle. We can't answer everything, but we can definitely be a reasonable substitute that tries to answer a certain information that you can approximate at the very least.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that would be all from us. Thank you, Ain, for the answer, the very interesting answer, and thank you everyone for the question. All right, and also thank you everyone for tuning into this session. We see you in the next session. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.